Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. Ba-da.
Dun 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 dun.
E. I love Sesame Street.
Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. The brand new FC Dallas Prime Blue jerseys and Pride pre-match tops are in stock now. Listeners of Third Degree, yep, you get 25% off on all your stuff at soccer90.com. Just use your code, specially designed just for you, Third Degree at checkout. Well, hello there, FC Dallas curious fan. Welcome to another edition of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, how you doing? I'm Peter, joined by my two amigos, Dan Crook.
What's going on? It's been an interesting week. We should talk about it.
We should talk about it, Dan. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, founder, editor of ThirdDegree.net, the amazing Buzz Carrot. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. Calling in today from my basement because I'm hiding from all the heat I got because of my article I wrote about the breakdown.
Oh, did you catch some heat?
Well, I mean, relatively speaking, I got more. I mean, you know, most of the time, FC Dallas fans are not particularly antagonistic. You know, so even like one or two, this to me anyway. And this time I at least got like 2 or 3 people maybe were like, you suck. And I was like, oh my, dude.
Why do they think you... Wait, the team sucks. Why do they think you suck?
Because I didn't say Jara was the worst player in the history of the world.
All right, so let's dig into this. It just all feels like it's coming apart at the seams, and the nosedive is about to happen. I want to remind everybody that MLS history is littered with teams that sucked at the beginning of the season. And if there's ever one weird little thing to think about, Dallas is terrible and Seattle is flying high. And it never goes that way. It always happens in reverse, and by the end of the season, Dallas is flatlined and Seattle's headed to another MLS Cup. So maybe, just maybe, this is all happening for a good reason.
Yeah, they're not Chicago and Cincinnati. Maybe that's... they got 5 points at least.
Sure.
So, Peter, can you just clarify? Are you saying that FC Dallas are going to buy a really good player in mid-season that's going to turn it all around?
Oh, sure, yeah. Some amazing South American that they spend actual money dollars on in the transfer window, and he shows up and just starts balling out. Yeah, that pretty much feels like what should happen at this point.
I mean, that's definitely what Seattle does.
That's what Seattle would do. Yeah, WWSD.
Well, if we didn't have such a full show, we could actually talk about like the 4 or 5 things that could happen that could turn the season around. But the show's really full. Yeah, we have a lot to do.
Yeah, let's start with it. Up in Minnesota at that beautiful little stadium, it was Minnesota 1, your Huntsman 0. And I think that score somewhat belies the actual story of the game, Buzz.
Well, what was your story of the game then? Because the overall one for me is the formation. But go ahead with what.
Well, just that I think Minnesota could have scored a way more than one goal. Yeah. It could have. If you had told me that game ended up being 5-0 Minnesota, it wouldn't have surprised me. Not that Minnesota I thought was playing a very good game because both those teams are utter crap. But 1-0 on a goal in injury time wasn't exactly how I thought the game was actually being played out.
Yeah, so there's multiple things that are happening in terms of the tactics and the team and all that kind of stuff that was worth talking about. First is, of course, there's a 3-5-2. Now, whether you like a 3-man back line or not is a entirely different discussion. And right now, it's happening because they want to get Brisson in the game and they don't have a lights-out 6. So you're getting a 3-man back line. But given that it's a 3-man back line, and I think some people misunderstood me and said, this is what I was asking for. Well, what I was asking for was a 2-man front when you go 3. Instead of 3-4-3, you had to go 3-5-2 because you need that third central midfielder. It had to happen. And so they did that. And that part, in the context of the 3-man back line, that part was better. Now, the other big storyline, as you say, is that they're going on the road, and this is a team that stinks on the road. We've talked about it over and over, and they're going with a grinded out mentality. They're sitting in a low block. They're giving the other team whole bunches of shots, most of which came from outside the box, which is, we've had this discussion before about the validity of that tactic. Yet Dallas still had more of the ball. So granted, Minnesota had more of the shots. I don't know how good most of them were, but from Luchi's standpoint, he will tell you, and he tried to tell people post-game, we were great in the first half. No, I don't think they were great in the first half. They were okay in the first half. But their game plan, to a certain extent, worked up until the very end when it didn't. And this is something they've tried before, and it's probably something they're going to try again, because right now they can't win for crap on the road.
Well, okay, I saw Luchi's quote about it being one of the best first-half performances, and I thought that's really grasping, because it's almost like the tallest kindergartner compliment or something, because if you compare it to every other first half of the first 4 games of the season, I suppose it was one of the best ones, but it still wasn't very good. They had 1 shot on goal the entire first half. And Dan, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but my hot sports opinion, based on all the reaction I saw, was that with this 3-5-2, the problem, frankly, was not Franco Jara. It was Jair Obrian. That was who really the problem in the formation was, asking that guy to play so out of position.
I like the Jair Benitez. Yeah, no, he was...
Sorry.
He was completely a fish out of water. Timed his runs terribly, just didn't really know what to do. And I know the off striker in that front two kind of has that free role to lurk behind, but he just, I don't know, maybe Freddy Vargas caused the shots on the wings. I don't know, because he just positionally just wasn't there. Obviously missed that wonderful opportunity when Jara set him up with the open goal. Missed a couple of nice sets from Jara, honestly.
I thought...
Which reinforces what you said. Jara wasn't the problem. Jara actually played very well as the guy leading the line.
Jara played the position as if he had done it before, which he had. And Jara was offside 5 times, which was all a result of just him trying to overcome his slowness. Obrian's 4 offsides were all just bad positioning, bad timing, and just being completely unfamiliar with playing that position. Because, frankly, I did some research. I cannot find any record that tells me Obrian has ever played in a 2-man striker formation before.
Yeah, even if he had, that's that particular role is not it's not as typical as just one guy sits behind the other, cleans things up. It's there's a lot of creative freedom on there, and he just kind of lacked it. Jara was offside because they played a really high defensive line, and as a slow guy, he's got to cheat to kind of have any chance on it. But you saw the difference when Dante Seeley came in and actually kind of had the nuances of the position, and he had that run almost immediately. Granted, he got pushed outside to where the shot was really harmless, but he wasn't getting caught offside every 5 seconds.
Yeah, Buzz, this is what I mean, Peter. Sorry, this is what I meant when I said that Jara wasn't the worst player in the game. He was a perfectly reasonable 9 in a 3-5-2. As you said, he wasn't the problem. He wasn't the worst player on the day. There's a big gap between good and not bad, and I really said he wasn't bad. He was mediocre, which for Jara is a step forward. Now, is that worth $2.9 million? No.
No,
that's different.
Dollar bang for the buck, he's the worst player on the field, but that's not how we do that these days, right?
No.
And it was, and I just thought it was obvious from the onset that the two of them had never played with each other in that formation, and I just found it really weird. Look, I get it. You bring guys in from other countries with pedigrees and resumes. You feel like they've got to be on the field. But that was screaming to me to take Obrian off and put Pepe on. Pepe would have played that position so much better, and they probably would have gotten something out of it had he played people in positions that they are used to playing in.
Yeah, Pepe could have played that spot, or even Jara's spot, and vice versa. Vargas can play that spot. Obviously, Jesus Ferreira would be the real guy in that spot. I think some of that is they brought Obrian here to be a starter, and he didn't want to punish Obrian just because they were having to make an adaptation to get this extra midfielder on, in a sense. Whereas Vargas had played himself out of the lineup, Obrian hasn't. So, there's some service to that there, I think. I agree that O'Brien was the problem in this particular forward set. That's clearly true.
One thing I was disappointed was, even away from the lineup and the formation was, Luchi came out and after the game said, I lost in the last minute, the stoppage time was excessive. He always talks about not making excuses, not believing in luck. But I was thinking, that game was lost over the course of 90 minutes. It was just very, very lucky to get to 0-0 in the 93rd minute, particularly with that penalty shout that I was very surprised didn't get given.
That's my big problem with this formation and this tactic, is that this idea that we're going to grind it out, it puts your team on the back foot in my mind.
Also, that was a winnable game.
Yeah,
and you've gone there from minute one and said it's you're fighting for a 0-0.
Okay, but and the other because I want to talk about some of the other stuff on the field, but the other glaring problem with this team is Munjome, who I just kept talking to the television repeatedly. Every time he would receive the ball somewhere in the attacking half of the field, he'd have that slow-ass Gaspar guy to beat who wasn't playing very well, and tons of space behind Gaspar, and Eddie would stop the ball, turn around, and pass it backwards. And I thought, Eddie, why aren't you attacking that space? And he just wouldn't do it. And I can't figure out if that's a confidence issue, if that is that a Luchi instruction issue. What's going on there? Because that is a glaring problem to me, Buzz.
Yeah, my take is that they've spent so much time working with him on his defense because that was his weakness. I mean, we saw a guy at SMU who was arguably the best attacking outside back in the college game. SMU vacated like entire halves of the field to the guy. He was so good. Now, it's a huge step up to MLS, and I imagine that the overload of defensive instructions has made him, be more mindful of that thing and made him more negative and more conservative and try not to blow it and make a mistake, which, of course, is a problem because he is such a good attacker that he ought to be tearing that guy apart. And I think that it's pretty clear at this point that there's an issue with right back. It's why they keep trying to put Ryan over there to fix it, which of course doesn't fix it. Munjome is going to have to unfreeze his brain offensively and just play the way he's capable of playing, and he'll be fine. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of, we'll talk about it later, but there's not a lot of options other than him at this point at right back. So I agree that it was like he run into a brick wall. Like you said, he would get to that final third line and just turn around and go backwards. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're doing.
Because there's just tons of empty space. It's all the clear open opportunity to get in behind Minnesota, and it was like he was told not to go there.
It was kind of funny. He was on the media call today, and that definitely came up. I think Nico asked it, and the answer he gave was very much like Reggie in his early days of, I'm just trying to get the defensive aspect down. I'm trying not to overcommit, and I know I need to learn these things. I had it down at SMU, but NCAA and MLS are vastly different levels. And he's definitely adjusting, but he's what, 3 starts in, three. Actually, maybe a sub and 2 starts in. He's definitely got some work to do, and he had as much as he had training sessions with Reggie and then Bryan last season. He didn't get any, he only got 5 games with North Texas to really kind of put any of that to use.
Yeah, you're looking at a guy that needs half a season, just like Reggie did, just like Bryan did. They need time to plan. And he's not even as good as those 2 guys. So it'll come probably. We hope. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just in my head, when Bryan stepped in last year, he was at least attacking with the ball on a pretty regular basis. But maybe I'm remembering that wrong.
Well, Bryan is an exceptional case. He's such a good player and look at the level he's at now. This is not that kid. This is a different kid. So,
yeah. Okay. Well, the other thing that I do want to talk about, although with the 3-5-2, it put Ricarte, Tessman, and Acosta back together in the center of the midfield. And while the 3 of them overall, like the rest of the team, didn't have an overall good game, we had another really promising start for Bryan Acosta, who's put 5 really solid performances together. The team doesn't look any better. Again, that's this weird kind of lack of knock-on effect from this. But, man, Acosta really is playing quite well, and I wish we could see him play well along with the rest of the team.
Yeah, he's playing exceptionally well, but he's playing like as this 6-ish, 8-ish hybrid thing. It's too bad there's not like a dominant 6 around, because then they could just move him up the field, and it probably would help the team tremendously. Tanner is a 6 is not really working. Tanner's an 8 is fine, other than the fact he's 18. So right now that midfield is as good as it's going to get, unless they get a lockdown 6, and then it can be whoever this new player hypothetically might be, and Acosta and Ricarte, and then maybe things are different. Or maybe Paxton factors in there as well somewhere at certain points.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the stats, and Tespin, by my eye, didn't have a great game, but he had the most tackles, he had the most pressures, he broke up the most dribbles. Maybe Tanner had a better game against Minnesota than I thought, although not what I was hoping for.
Yeah, he's pretty good as a two-way player. Right now, he's just not making like the game-breaking pass, but neither is even Ricarte tried. Like Ricarte had like 5 or 6 occasions where he made what I thought was a gorgeous pass, only to have somebody mistime their run and be outside. So, the whole thing, again, it comes back to this idea we've been talking about all season, where the midfield to the front line connection right now is not working. There's not enough touches for strikers and 9s in general. It's still a work in progress offensively.
All right, so Dan, is there anything about Dallas's performance that you saw that you felt good about that you want to throw in here before we jump into the really hot, stinky part of the game that I want to scream and yell about?
Really, that it was over, and they kind of have a bit of what they call a derby in some aspects coming up that may kick them into life a little bit. Let's get stinky.
Yeah, so the thing that that really drove me nuts, and again, this may be even more bizarre than the decision he made last week to throw him in, was the substitution of the Hungarian kid Schön. And the reason why this may have been even more bizarre is that he subbed him in at wingback, and it was as clear as day to me. Within seconds, that dude has no idea how to play that position, and sure enough, Minnesota figured that out about as fast as they could, and they just kept driving at him relentlessly, and it finally paid off.
Yeah, this is one of the worst subs I've ever seen FC Dallas make, which is saying something. I don't understand this at all. Now, apparently he's played some outside back somewhere, but that's not the same as wing back, and I don't know that he trained this way this week. One of the things I did tease earlier that I did talk to Luchi. So one of the things we talked about was this sub, and the idea apparently was to attack back at them down that wing and make them sit back. Well, Schön spent so much of his own time sitting back on his tail because he was getting spun like a top that he became completely ineffective attacking. And as you say, they overloaded that side the rest of the game. I think both Paxton and Dante Seeley tried to come help out, and it didn't get any better. It just was an absolute disaster of a sub. And forget about the part where it put Ryan Hollingshead at right back again, which is always horrible these days. But the bottom line was the continued forcing of Schön into games is ridiculous. And I think there's some recognition on the part of the coaching staff, certainly, and Luchi certainly, that this was a mistake, and they know it was a mistake. They may not come out and say it out 100% directly, but I think they know they blew this one.
It's kind of funny. I mean, I know, obviously we had different conversations. You had a one-on-one at practice, and, I was on the media call. But when he got on that, talking about the subby, he was kind of a bit withdrawn about it, as if to say, yeah, hold my hands up, but without actually saying it. Just kind of said, Ryan had been carrying a knock, so Schön had been in the rotations at left wing back in the week, and he kind of saw something he liked about how he could, really bring it to the defence up the left-hand side, and I guess that, he just didn't get to see that in the game. But, after the game, we was talking about, he's played there before. I think we looked it up, and he'd played twice at left back in in a back four for MTK. So, left wing back, you're asking so much more in terms of where you come inside, how often you stay outside, where you commit forward and back. It's only a small movement up the pitch, but when Luchi talks about the difference in roles, that's kind of, night and day.
Yeah, there's two parts of this that I want to talk about, so don't let me forget to go back to the second one. The first one is the fact that Luchi as a coach, and we all have to give him some room for growth, is this weird almost like mandate, an idea that he has that he's always talking about player flexibility, positional flexibility, and in this game in particular, putting O'Brien at striker, a position that he is clearly not used to playing, with a guy he's not used to playing that position with, throwing Schön in on at wingback, asking Ryan to play on the right side of the field. There are multiple instances where he's putting people out of position because I think he mentally thinks they should be able to do it, but it's coming at the detriment of his team. And there's a part of me that wonders, do the other coaches or does anybody else identify this? Because I feel like Luchi's the head coach of one of 30 MLS teams. This is a pretty limited opportunity, pretty high-level opportunity, and all of these things seem clearly obvious to you and me, Buzz and Dan, and we're just ding-dongs with a podcast. How is this not obvious to them, too? And this is the part I don't get.
Well, I think Luchi sometimes overthinks things a little bit. He takes these conceptual ideas and thinks, man, this is going to be a great idea. It's going to work. And sometimes they don't. And the other is something I've expressed before, which is a little bit of a academy mentality that you can just take your best player and put him anywhere, which is true. Like you can take Tanner Tessman when he was at the U19, so you literally can play him in any position on the field, and they did. I don't think that's true as a pro. In my extensive, non-coaching world, once you get to the pro level, and this is the kind of thing where somebody like my dad would ask me, how come you say that guy's only a right back? I mean, you can play him wherever you want, right? No, that's your rec team that does that. At the pro level, you have to be hyper-specialized. Like a friend of mine who's just learning the game of soccer, the other day he asked me how I know somebody's a right back versus a right mid or whatever. And I said, well, how do you know somebody's a shortstop versus a second baseman? And he's like, oh, I get it. Well, in your sport, you get it and right? So at the pro level, you need to be hyper specialized to be that good at one particular thing. Yes, there are examples of guys, you can put them anywhere on the field. I'm sure you can put Messi at right back. I mean, why you would want to, I have no idea, but I'm sure you could. And so it's that kind of thinking, that idea that like, I'm going to take my best dudes and put them wherever I want. You can't really do that. I mean, there are guys that can do a couple of spots, but there's not guys that can play pretty much anywhere on the field. Even Ryan Hollingshead, we joke that he does that, but it's not like he's great at those other positions when he does that. I mean, it's not, he doesn't get red carded. They don't score 15 goals on him, but it's not good.
Okay, but here's my next question. Who's kind of second in command to Luchi? Is it Peter Lucene?
No, it's Mikey. Is it Varis? Yeah.
No, okay, that kind of ruins the point I was trying to make, which was, isn't somebody on the sideline grabbing Luchi by the sleeve and going, are you sure you want to do this? Or is Luchi of some sort of status that nobody questions his decision-making? Because I know he's the head coach, but in reality, Luchi, on paper, especially compared to Peter Lucene, they're kind of like the same guy. Lucene's got the better resume and played at a higher level. I would think somebody should be brave enough to go to Luchi and go, yeah, I don't think this is a good idea.
Well, here's my read of the FC Dallas staff. Mikey is Luchi's buddy from coaching academies.
Who is Mikey Vargas?
Varis.
Who is he?
I don't know. He's got an A pro license or whatever. He and Luchi met going through school together.
He was academy director at one of the clubs in Arizona. I think Luchi played against them a few times. Really liked his style and pitched for him to get a job with Dallas.
He's got a really good resume. I don't have any complaints about him being on the staff, but he's Luchi's right-hand guy. He's his yes man. He's his buddy. That's fine. Peter was an academy coach that had played for the team that Luchi had brought up to the first team. So again, Luchi brought him in. right? That's really it. I mean, they've got Chewy working with him, who's the former U19 coach, right? They've got the keeper coach, Drew, who they kept around, who they've actually given a lot of responsibility to beyond goalkeeping coaching. So it's those 4 guys mainly, though. And we talked about this when they hired him, Peter, that they didn't bring in a John Ellinger to his Chelsea Hyman, right? They didn't keep somebody on his bench that would be the guy that would over his shoulder and go, "That's stupid, don't do that."
Right.
He doesn't have a guy that do that.
All right, so this leads me to my second part of this conversation, which is there's just something about the addition of this guy to the roster that, and this is the conspiracy theorist in me, and I apologize to any podcast listener that's rolling their eyes and going, "Oh, there he goes again," which is there's just something weird about this whole Schön signing. Because not only has he, like, the most untypical FC Dallas style, showed up and immediately been put into the game. Because, there used to be a time in a day where we all fussed about the fact that they signed somebody they were all excited about, yet they never got into games until they had been here for like 3 months and the season was almost over. Remember those days?
Yeah.
And so now here's a guy, he shows up within a day or two, he's starting a game. And then today, the most amazing thing happened. The media team started putting out content about him, and they had an interview with him. And I thought to myself, I think this is good content, but I've never seen them do this for a signing before. Like when they signed Franco Jara, did they do this? Did they do it for Vargas? Did they do it for Obrian? Did they do it for anybody else they've added to the team recently? And it just made me wonder, what else is going on here? Or am I just making this up for drama's sake?
Well, I can tell you that having talked to Luchi today, I actually asked him about this kind of concept. And the short answer is that Luchi in particular is just really, really hyped about the guy's ability. And the organization seems to be really, really hyped about this guy's ability. The fact that he's going to be in the Euros, the fact that they think he's a big-time prospect and going to be an amazing player, or already is an amazing player. Now, we could talk about whether that's true or not in a minute. One of the things to remember here, Peter, is that he actually speaks some level of English, and those other 5 guys that you mentioned don't. So it's hard to media splash those guys all over the place when they can't do an interview. Whereas this kid
I
actually
disagree with you on that.
I'm not saying it's hard to do in reality. I'm saying it's hard for them to do. They don't. Yeah. When do they ever hype Spanish-only speaking players or Portuguese-only speaking players? Think about the Brazilians that you get to see interviewed. It's Bressan because he speaks English. And Jose Martinez, who can kind of do a little bit of English. And that's it. When do we get gotten Philippe? No English, no interviews. When do you ever get Bryan Acosta? No English, no interviews. Right? You get Bryan Acosta all the time if you can speak Spanish. And they don't have anybody on their staff that can write or do stories or do video stories that speak Spanish. So no hype for no English, no hype.
When they did, they would nix those stories. So, they evidently didn't want to appeal to that market.
All right, well, that's a different thing for a different conversation and another maddening thing that drives us nuts about this club. All right, so maybe they're just picking up on the opportunity because the kid speaks English, but it just feels like to me there's a whole level of business going on here that is completely unrelated to the success of the on-field product, but maybe, again, that's just me making crap up.
I wondered about that until I had this conversation with Luchi today, and now I don't wonder about that. They really just think the kid's amazing.
Did he go into any detail about how he was scouted, or what about his game that they really like, or is this a recommendation from some dude they know in Hungary?
Not the scouting or the recommendation, but the part of his game that they liked. He talked about how he's a real, true out-and-out winger. He's not this underneath false winger like Vargas, so there's a change of pace there. They talked about his ability to get to the end and get balls in. They talked about his ability. Luchi. They talked about his ability on the ball. They talked about the fact that he'll actually play some defense, which I haven't seen that part yet. But they're just really hyped about him, and he's only 20? So that's, my opinion is different than his, obviously. So some of these other ideas that maybe they're trying to do a quick flip for money. Maybe Zanata wants to do that, but that's not the way Luchi's looking at this guy. Luchi's looking at him like he's a legit high-level piece that they've got in. They're trying to get him in as fast as possible.
All right. Well, before we move on to your report from practice and other things to talk about, any more about Minnesota 1, Dallas 0?
Not particularly, other than I think short of some sort of signing to change the midfield composition like a real six, short of that, I think you're going to see this 3-man back line, probably 3-5-2 on the road a fair bit as they try and grind out games. I don't think you'll see it. Won't see it at home. I think it'll be on the road that you'll see it because, all the reasons why Luchi did it are still in play. Nothing has changed after that game. It's going to make you think, I'm not doing that because he says he thinks it worked. He thinks they almost had that game. Okay. I mean, I disagree, but.
So do you think Luchi went into that game hoping to get a draw?
Yeah, or steal it with a goal late. Yeah, that was the idea. Grind it out on the road. Like, listen, he's desperate to get any kind of points on the road. They've been terrible on the road. He's trying. He's trying anything he can do to try and get some kind of result on the road. And maybe that's the way you start, by grinding out a point or two. Maybe then you can start to get some confidence, because right now they're totally blown on the road, basically.
Yeah. We'll update the record. Lucci is now 5 wins, 6 draws, and 18 losses in his tenure as manager of Dallas.
Wow.
Dan, any notes you'd like to make about the game that we didn't talk about?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Well, then we'll drop it and move on, as Buzz did go to practice today, and as you teased so smartly on the social media today, you did have a one-on-one 30-minute conversation with Lucci for the first time in over a year.
Oh, yeah.
And before you get to that, I'm going to step back to the Schön thing and ask you, when you saw practice, did you see anything from that dude's game in practice that made you feel better? Did he look injured from being unscrewed from the Minnesota turf?
Well, he looks really fit. It looks like he came in great shape. I don't see a player that dominates play, but I see a guy that has a lot of potential. Like, he looks like, to me, like a super exciting prospect. Like, if you'd have just told me this is a kid out of the academy we just pulled up, I'd be ecstatic. There's tons of ability here. It's not I was going to say organized. That's not the right word. It's not in sync with the team yet. It's not polished, and it's not complete, but there are moments of greatness. And then there are moments of like, I don't know what the hell is going on, because he doesn't know what the hell's going on. So it's very hot and cold, very hit and miss. Super excited based purely on what I see. Super excited about some potential there. Is he going to revolutionize Major League Soccer over the next 4 months? I don't think so, but I put him up there with some of the, even more higher than Vargas in terms of like my thinking of like, oh, this kid's going to be something. Probably almost up as where maybe like the first sometimes I saw Jesus or Paxton. It's that good, but it's that raw in the sense of like a couple of years ago. I think with time, I think he's going to be fine. My complaints are how they're forcing him in, not the kid himself, or acting like he's, acting like you just signed Messi. It's right. Like it's a 20-year-old kid. Let's stop putting the world on him.
But he would officially play the wide left position in a 3-4-3 formation, not a wing back in a 3-5-2.
Oh yeah, he's definitely.
Or in a 4. In the 4-2-3-1, he plays the wide advanced left position. Okay.
High left wing, yeah. Same position Vargas has been playing. Same position where Mosquera played last year. Fava Pico played last year. That high left wing, that's the spot.
Do you know if he's left or right or both footed?
He wasn't noticeably one-sided one way or the other. I would imagine he's a lefty because Lucci did talk about his ability to cross as one of the factors they like about him. But I didn't notice. It's kind of like when you watch Tanner play, where he can play with both, but then I wasn't looking for that. So
yeah, interesting.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know if you'll watch the interview that Garrett did, but Schön talked about for MTK. He played kind of more as that inside winger, that false like Freddy Vargas type of winger. Where he's cutting inside, so it's wholly possible he's cutting. He's used to cutting into his right on that, and now he's kind of playing up outside and inside, and then you see those moments where he gets a bit confused about it.
Yeah, he didn't do that a lot today. He mostly stayed wide. Today was a lot of mid-block press work, which can make for a very chaotic environment, and they're directing him about when to press and how to step in and all that kind of stuff. So they're working with him and the whole team on these defensive rotations for the today was mid press. So, it's a lot of good possibility there. There's a lot of things that are intriguing. I mean, purely on what I saw, I'm excited, but I'm not excited that like, is he going to start this weekend because he's so ready? I mean, no.
Excited by what you saw
Yeah.
at practice today, not what you saw in
Yeah.
his 2 appearances in actual games.
Yeah, he looked better in practice today than he looked in the damn game. He looked terrible in both games. Like the first game, I thought he has no clue where to go. And this second game, he has no clue how to defend. Well, today I actually saw a player that like, oh, yeah, okay, fine. In the mix, great. Is he ready to start? No way. But, I see a player that looks like he's got game, so
Yeah.
Not like I'm going to totally turn my team over and build the squad around him, but great piece, over the course of the season. Let's see what you got.
Well, what makes his addition to the roster so confusing is the number of people that they, in theory, have that are supposed to be able to play that position, and it's been the position that is, drove most of us that are fans of this team nuts for seasons now. And related to all of that is that Schön aside, the person that's supposed to be playing that position is Paxton, who did make an appearance in the game again against Minnesota. His effect on the game was pretty nominal. But then in your tease today, you did say that Paxton was not at training, and damn you, Buzz, if you give me bad news, I'm going to be so crushed.
Well, let's talk first about the number of left wings. The amount of left wings they have and the limited amount of center backs they have is how you know that the 3-5-2 is not the real formation for this team. If you really were going to play that way, you wouldn't have 18 wings and you would have a hell of a lot more than 3 center backs. So that's all a factor of why that formation doesn't work. But where's Paxton? That's a good question that I specifically asked. Turns out that Paxton I can't remember whether it was Monday, I think, basically got a bonk on the head. And so at the time was fine. And then after training, he was like, I feel a little dizzy. So they checked him out and they held him out Tuesday as a precaution. But Tuesday, he's 100% fine. He has no concussion symptoms. He has no dizziness at all. They just held him out for 2 days because it's Paxton. And they want to be super paranoid, careful because it's Paxton, right? He's fine.
Wrap him in tissue.
Yeah. It's kid gloves. They got him in a glass case.
Wednesdays.
Wait,
Yeah.
when you say bonk on the head, like he hit it on the cabinet door, or
no.
bonk in a training session?
No, he jumped up with somebody and he headed somebody's shoulder or something. They said it wasn't even a big deal, and that I didn't even think about anything of it until he said he was a little bit dizzy later in the day. Well, with Paxton that could have been heat and overwork because it's Paxton. As much as how he is, So they've got him in a glass case, wrapped in bubble wrap. He's fine. He's being taken by armored car to the next game, so be safe.
Listeners think that Buzz is exaggerating, but Paxton is currently in a bubble wrap suit
Yeah,
in his apartment,
yeah,
strapped to his bed.
yeah. They don't let him out much anymore. He's the bubble boy. No, they're so paranoid about the kid. Basically, they were like, let's just sit him out for a couple of days just to be careful. So he's fine.
All right. Any other stuff before we get into the conversation with Luchi? Let's just clear off the practice slate. Make sure you get all those notes in.
Well, Kenny Cooper was around dressed in full FC Dallas coaching gear. He wasn't coaching. I think he's done this before where he's talked to them about letting him come observe. He's learning. He wants to learn.
Wait, Kenny Cooper's a full kit wanker. He just shows up at practice. He's like the hardcore fan of all fans and shows up in full FCD regalia and hangs out.
Here's my funny thought I had about Kenny Cooper today when I was watching him. I remembered at the end of Oscar's era when Kenny's like, can I come give it one last shot? And they were like, yes. And I watched him train and I watched him compete for a couple of weeks. And it struck me that reminds me of Franco Jara. Oh, and I was like, oh, Jesus.
So as Dan referred to it last week, that wasn't the good turn time he was with the club.
Right. That's exactly right. So I had that thought when I was watching Cooper today because he was just, helping out, chasing balls and stuff. Jesus Ferreira showed up and was jogging, so that's good. Moving around, that's good.
How long before he's back? Do we have any idea?
I don't know. Soon. It was supposed to be like anytime, basically. So he's out jogging, so it's got to be close.
Okay.
They may just want to be careful with him because, listen, they need him badly. So
Luchi did say he's still in danger of re-injuring it. He's got to do some rehab, build the muscle up around that shoulder.
Yeah, it might be a little longer then if that's true. Nkosi Tafari showed up at training, and I've never seen a more dejected guy in my life. He basically sat in a chair with his head in his hands for about 30 minutes.
Why?
I think he's just gutted because he's hurt again, at a terrible time when they only have 3 center backs.
What injury does he have?
I don't remember what it is. Dan, do you remember?
Thigh or a quad, I think.
Yeah, something that's to do with movement, I think. They had to bring over the new center back from North Texas, Kaiser. They brought him over to fill in training today. So it's like, I just feel bad for Nkosi because I really like him, and he's having the worst luck, and it's just not going well for him. And guys that are older like that come out of college, they only get a season or two. That spins back to Munjome too. That guy's on a contract that's about to be up other than bonus options. So it's like, clock's ticking when you're a senior out of college. It's not an academy kid, different world. So that's it in terms of like stuff I witnessed that was worth talking about. Other than we can get into the RSL prediction if you want, and then talking to Luchi.
Well, no, let's talk about it. I think everybody's tuned in to hear about the first one-on-one exclusive conversation with Luchi that you've had in what is it? It's had to have been a year, right?
Yeah, it's got to be at least a year because even before that, rarely was Luchi there with just me. I mean, there's almost always other people around before the pandemic. So it's been a long time since I've talked to him just by myself. My overall takeaway is that
he hates you.
No. Well. I was surprised. He was surprisingly friendly. I thought he might trash me, after I have been a little critical lately. He was very friendly. So, good for him that he's not reading it. My overall takeaway is that Luchi is very much in a mindset right now, and this is my opinion from talking to him. He's in a mindset that he has the roster that he has, and he's doing the best he can with the roster that he has, that he knows that there are some problems, both in terms of like a hole that you want to fill and in terms of dead weight and albatross contracts. And that, I'll equate it to when Cobra, remember when we talked about how shit Cobra was for 6 months? He was utter garbage, and Luchi never gave up on him. Luchi doesn't give up on people. So Luchi will work his tail off and try to get these guys to come good. So he's going to keep trying to get Franco Jara to come good, and maybe he'll work it out, and maybe he'll look like a genius like he did with Cobra, and we all were wrong about Cobra. So, whatever player you want to talk about on the field, Luchi's not going to give up on him. He's going to keep working, and he's going to try and do the best he can with the roster that he has that he didn't build. And some of it comes from the fact that, generally speaking, he has the most hands-on owner in the entire league. Name another owner that has an office in the park and that it meets with you every single day. The owner, not the technical director too, the owner every single day wants to come and meet you and talk to you and wants to hear who's playing where and doing what and the numbers that go with this, that, and the other thing. Dan Hunt is the most hands-on owner in the league.
Okay.
So you got to deal with that. And I think that was my overall takeaway from talking to Luchi about every issue he has were those two things.
You know what that sounds, listening to you describe that, the first thing that came to mind was exactly the impression I would come away from in my one-on-one conversations with Oscar.
Yeah. Oscar's was in the same boat. Clavijo or Muzi made the moves, or Dan Hunt too. And every day, here's Dan Hunt. He wants to know what's going on.
All right,
he's president of the team.
Yeah, but here's where I think things diverge from Luchi to Oscar. Oscar somehow was able, and Steve Davies used to talk about this. He was the first one that really brought it up and really made me aware of it, and I think did a good job of trying to make sure people understood what was happening with Oscar, was the amount of success that Oscar was able to achieve with this club, with which was by all accounts known across the league as one of the worst rosters possible to be working with. And I think when you think about the way that Luchi is lining this team up and the players he has at his disposal, we can talk about how messed up the roster is, but I would also throw some shade at Luchi in that he is largely at fault for putting the team in the formations and using the tactics that he's using. Because I think there's a better team buried in this mess than he's putting on the field.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't think he's by any means. I mean, listen, you compare him to Oscar is ridiculous. Oscar's the best coach this club's ever had, and I think he's one of the great coaches I've ever known, and one of the great people I've ever known. And I like a lot about Luchi, but he is definitely not Oscar, and he would tell you that he's not Oscar. We all know that he's in probably a decade too early in this job. Did we say that already in this podcast? Because he's learned every single time he makes a mistake. He admits it, says, I made a mistake, and he learns, and hopefully he moves on. And some of the stuff that he should have learned as an assistant or should have learned coaching North Texas, he's learning coaching FC Dallas. And he makes mistakes, and it's not perfect, and it is what it is, No,
I understand. And please, I want to make sure that I'm communicating the point I'm trying to make very clearly. Luchi and Oscar were facing the same difficulties coaching this team in this club for this ownership, right?
Yeah.
They both have had to deal with really crummy rosters or what they felt like were not the rosters of what they wanted. Oscar, being far more experienced and probably overall a better coach, was just more successful at getting good results out of a bad situation. Luchi, having very little experience, is struggling doing that, and part of the reason why I think is that he's just getting some of his decisions wrong in that process. I agree with you, Buzz. It's not Luchi's fault. He took a job he wasn't ready for. Hell, my entire career is made up of me taking gigs I wasn't the right person. I wasn't qualified for when I took them. So I get it. I understand it. It doesn't make me dislike the guy. I just don't think. I'm just worried he's in over his head.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as far as say it's in over his head. Because I've talked to him enough, and especially even today, that there's a recognition for a lot of these problems and his ideas about how to fix them. Now, some of them will be different than what you and I would do, but he's the guy with the job, and I agree that it could be better. I definitely agree with that. I mean, we just spent 20 minutes talking about the Schön sub, and we can talk all day about not putting people in positions they're not capable of playing. Stop putting Ryan all over the field. Stop putting him at right back. Leave him at left back. Stop trying to play guys in like 18 different positions. Pick a position, play the guy there, let it be good at the one thing, and then move on. So there's lots of things at fault, but, and I think there's a chance that he can turn this thing in a positive direction. I don't think he can get it to the top four, not without some pretty heavy. I mean, you have to come good in like 6 things would have to come good, but a couple of things positive go the right direction, and this team will be much significantly better than bottom of the table. All
right. Now, and I'm going to ask this question only because it's been asked of me multiple times in the last few days, but it's going to feel like dogpiling. But I'm going to do it because I think it's the responsibility of this particular production. How much rope do we think the Hunts give Luchi in this position?
You mean like before he gets fired?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot.
What's a lot to you?
I think even if he finishes at the bottom of the table, I don't think he'd get fired. The thing is that, and I've said this before, I think that Luchi's 2 biggest influences are Schellas Hyman and Oscar Pareja, right? He is like the embodiment of everything FC Dallas thinks they are. The academy, those 2 head coaches, Clark at SMU, Pareja with this club, being the heart and soul of this club for 15 years. Those are his 2 biggest influences. He was a pretty good academy director. They like that idea. Everything about this club now is develop academy guys or sign young dudes like Schön, develop them and sell them. Bring in Philippe, develop him and sell him. This is what they do. And Luchi, in their minds, I think Luchi embodies that. So it would have to go really south and be clearly his fault for them, I think, to pull the trigger. I don't think he's going anywhere, no matter how bad this team is.
Dan, you got any thoughts on that?
No, I think Buzz has kind of put it perfectly, really.
All right. Well, I agree with you, and I certainly don't think he needs to lose his job. I'm not on that train. I certainly don't think this is a last place. I don't think this team is as bad as last place. I said I think there is a good team in here, and I certainly can see a script where things, they add a couple of players that Argentinian 6 that we keep hearing a rumor about. Maybe he turns out to be a solution. I'm still convinced all of the problems in this team are tied to whoever made the decision to sell Santos. I don't know if that was Santos demanding to leave. I don't know if they just saw $1 million and said, we got to have the money. I don't know what the decision was. Nobody's ever explained it. I don't even know if we've ever asked the question officially, but I'm convinced all of the problems start and end there.
Oh, I've asked officially. I don't have an on-the-record answer.
Okay. What's the off-the-answer record? Can you share that?
No.
Oh, okay.
What I will say is that I think
if you were to describe the answer as a color, would it be like a yellow or a red?
It's purple. Yeah, no, purple.
Oh,
yeah, purple.
Like bruise purple?
Yeah. The overwhelming vibe I'm getting, the longer Andres Zanata is here, the more I feel like Andres Zanata is a ruthless business guy. And I think he's been told by the Hunts, we don't make money in the stands. We make money in the academy. And if you can figure out how to make money with player moves, we love you. Because there's a lot more moves happening where you're like, boy, there's a dollar component to that we haven't seen before. Whether it's this loan for Philippe that couldn't have a buy, if the Olympics thing would have panned out, which it hasn't. There's this Schön with the Euros coming up. There's the sell of Thiago Santos when you're like, well, they got $1 million for a 31-year-old 6. Great. There's a ruthless business component to what they're doing these days, I think. And I think it comes from Zanata. And in a way, that's a little bit of a disconnect from the idea of like, we're going to have this team that's going to compete, if you're, because now they're a selling club, right? Luchi says it. They're a selling club. They're a developing club. That's what they are. So I know. I'm sorry, man. The answers aren't what we want, but
I know it's like a restaurant saying we're a fast food restaurant.
Yeah, I know.
We microwave our burgers.
I mean, look, Dan knows what a selling club is. You know what a selling club is.
I know.
We know.
But do those clubs call themselves selling clubs in public?
Some of them do, don't they?
Do they?
Yeah, some kind of, get backed into a corner and have to. I don't think anyone's ever said it with a point of pride, though.
Listen, we joke that they want to be Ajax, but that's what they want to be. And, everyone always says, we'll win something. Oh, yeah. No, listen, that's the part that they're not doing right. But that's
Ajax outspends all the other teams in the Eredivisie by like a factor of 10 or something like that. Okay.
We'll pick a different example. And they want to be West Ham. They want to be, who else has got a great academy? They want to be the team that has a great academy and that can compete. And that's what they're trying to. Yeah, they're trying their damnedest. They're trying their damnedest to be a developing club that can compete. It's not the LAFC model. It's not the Red Bulls model. They're trying their damnedest to make this model work. I'm not saying they're going to work, but everything they do fits this model.
The difference is, and you know what, Peter mentioned Luton. Luton is actually a very good example of a selling club. Luton would always do something like produce a guy like Matthew Upson or Jack Wilshere or John Hartson, any number of players down the years. James Justin and Jack Stacey at Leicester and Bournemouth last year. Produce a bunch of guys in the knowledge that you're going to sell them, and that the sale that you get is basically what's pays for your season, but have a guy behind that ready to go. Not sell the right back, sell the replacement right back, not really have anyone quite ready to assume the mantle. Meanwhile, okay, now we've got a left winger that we can put in the shop window. There's a selling club to stay afloat, and there's a selling club because you want to say you've got the most shiny assets.
Now, we've heard Dan Hunt say before that they consider themselves to be a stepping stone club now. Like they have that reputation, in South America, that they're seen as a club that you can come to and then move on. So they love that. Dan loves that. Their owner loves it. So it's what it is.
Yeah. All right.
I'm not saying you and I love it. I'm just trying to explain. It's what we do.
Well, we go back to Frisco Saturday night at 7 p.m. Real Salt Lake marches into town, and who the hell knows what's going to happen, Buzz?
Yeah.
Are we? Why don't you? Are you expecting wholesale changes, or you think they're going to go back to the 3-4-3? Do they go back to a 2-man back line? What do we do here?
Well, it'll be a 4-3-3. Some variation of the 4-3-3, whether it's a double six or single six is to be determined. Today was an interesting day because for one of the rare occasions, Luchi did 100% intermixed teams. Usually, you can see that one of the teams is the first 11. Today was not like that. Today was a complete mix. Guys playing in combination I've never seen before. But I still was able to pick out some groupings. And so I kind of have a prediction that it's going to be a back four and that it'll be Ryan and Martinez and Hedges and Munjome across the back. Interesting, Jimmy Maurer didn't really participate very much in training today. So I think he's still questionable. So it'll be Philippe. I imagine, like in the full scrimmage today, it was the two North Texas keepers. It was Sanchez and Shuttler. It's like even Philippe got held out. So, they obviously know they're down basically to 1.5 keepers. So they're protecting Philippe basically. So that's the back four. And then the midfield will certainly be Ricarte and Acosta. And then from what I was able to pick up on, both talking to Luchi and watching, there's a competition essentially between Edwin Cerrillo and Tanner Tessman. Is Edwin going to play as a 6 and move Acosta up, or is Tanner going to start as the 8 again? So that's the one question in midfield. And then the only other question, because it's going to be, based on what I saw today, it'll be Vargas and Obrian again, with the only other spot in competition being Pepe and Jara. And that definitely is in competition. They're trying to manage Jara's workload because he's 1,000 years old. So they pulled him out at the end, basically, trying to work his, protect him and not from overworking, because he does work hard. I'll give the guy that. He does work hard in practice. So they're trying to load management him a little bit. Pepe worked more with Obrian and Vargas today than Jara did, but I think you can't read too much of that on a Wednesday. So basically those are the two things. Is it Pepe or Jara? And is it Tanner or Cerrillo? And the reason it's Tanner or Cerrillo is just, can I get Acosta further up the field? It's not that Tanner stinks. It's just if I'm going to move Acosta up, it means I need a 6. So
I'm kind of surprised you didn't say that you thought Schön would start on the left this week.
No, I don't think so. Not based on what I saw in training today. I don't think he's going to start this week. I mean, I'm sure he'll be on the bench, and I'm sure he'll be one of the early guys in. Vargas played a little in the central midfield today too, which he's done a couple of times, which looks kind of interesting. But the other fun thing was Benny Redzik played right back, which is weird. That was just a practice thing. I did find out some more about Emma Tuamase, which I thought was fascinating. Apparently, whatever the deal was with his heart, I'm not even going to try and tell you what it was. What it meant was he had to shut down all physical activity for 2 months. So he couldn't even jog, kick a ball, nothing for 2 months. And so he effectively missed all of spring training. So that's why you haven't seen him. He's nowhere near the player that he was at the end of last season. He's nowhere near actually being fit because he sat around and did nothing for 2 months. So he's that's what I meant earlier when I said it's Munjome or nothing. Emma's not even close to being able to really play and contribute, even though he's technically healthy. So if it's not Munjome, it's going to have to be, I don't even know, more Ryan, I guess. So that's why Munjome's getting such a run, and partially because there's nobody else to play over there, really.
Okay, so what do we know about Real Salt Lake? I know they're a couple of points ahead, and if I'm reading this correctly, have they had a weird where they've played 3 of their first? They just came off a 3-game homestand. They started well. They beat Minnesota early in the season in Minnesota, but they've kind of dried up a little bit, tying Nashville at home last week.
It's only their second road game of the year. This weekend will be. So
yeah, that's crazy.
They look a little better than we thought because they've been playing at home. So I'm not sure you know what you're going to get. They got a lot of homegrown, so it's the big homegrown derby, as Dan called it.
The big homegrown. But
that was actually Luchi and someone from RSL on the call. They were talking about Luchi and Juarez, the RSL coach, are very good friends from their time doing their coaching badges together and opposite each other in the academy. Eddie Munjome was talking about, these are guys that they all know that they've played against for years, and it kind of goes back to that academy mentality anytime they get to play them.
Well, Dallas owns a superior record of 10 wins and 8 draws over Salt Lake. Salt Lake's only won 6 times in the matchup. And that game, again, is at 7 o'clock at Toyota Stadium, and I believe it's on TX21 again. Yeah, it is. So there you go if you want to watch that or come out.
And the big Spanish local broadcast, Peter, too. They made a big deal about that this week.
Why did they make a big deal of that this week? Because I swear they made a big deal. They made that announcement at the beginning of the season.
I think it was just a finalized schedule of how many games were going to be on and when they're going to be on. I think that's all it was.
I enjoyed the fact that the press release described the game this weekend as highly anticipated.
Well, it is now.
Why is it now?
Because it's the next game.
Oh, I see. Because it's the next game.
Yeah, I'm highly anticipating the
okay. We got other stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about first, Buzz? We got do you want to talk about rebranding? Do you want to talk about the Dynamo being sold? What do you want to talk about? Dan, you pick. Let's let Dan pick.
Yeah.
I just like that the run sheet actually says other stuff in red crayon.
That's true.
There's no red crayon. Stop with the red crayon.
When you write in crayon, do you write in your non-dominant hand?
Man, I don't even write anymore ever. I type everything.
No, you voice text.
Yeah, I do voice text a lot. I don't write with a pen.
You may be worse at voice texting than you are handwriting.
It's because I talk too fast.
Yeah. If Buzz ever says anything in a tweet or in Discord or anything that sounds vaguely offensive, it's because it's voice text and it's misheard him.
It's because Google Voice has misinterpreted what he said.
I want to start with Roman Torres having another hat trick. That's what I want to start with.
Yeah? Okay. Tell us all about that.
That's the premier kid who had like 4 hat tricks. You know, he had another hat trick in the States Cup. I think it's fascinating that Dallas is fielding a U20 team. It's a premier team. It's not academy players in the States Cup. I think that's very cool. It's all guys that are in college now or guys like Roman who took a gap year. He had another hat trick in the semifinal. I think it's awesome that they're doing that.
What is this, like the 5th hat trick you've reported on that guy since Dallas Cup?
He had 4 in the Dallas Cup, and this is the 5th one that I know of. Somebody asked me if he was going to be a homegrown signing. I was like, well, no, he's not an academy player, so he can't be. But I think he's going to. The rumor has that he's going to go. That he was going to go over pre-COVID and try and pick up with some lower division European teams. I'm sure that's what he's going to do now that he can travel.
Why is he not an academy player?
I don't know. Someone has told me there's some politics going on there. I have no idea about that. He does play as a 10. It is a position that they have a whole lot of talent. You know, it's a 10 or an 8. You know, they got a bags of guys in there. So it could just be a question of numbers. I mean, it's like the guys that play striker that they didn't bring along because they had Pepe. I mean, there's some great players that they haven't brought along because they had guys that are better. Mm-hmm. So I'm not, Roman Torres has got some ability and he's got some game for him in terms of showing up big time in big games. I love that. I love that he's gotten a chance with North Texas. I love that you'll probably see him again with North Texas before he leaves, probably. I mean, it's just a fun story that a guy that's from the Premier side instead of the Academy side is doing great things. I love it.
Okay. And we saw the news today that a guy out of New York is buying a percentage of the ownership for the Houston Dynamo at about $400 million. And the Dash, too, right? It's both the women's and the men's team.
But not the stadium.
But not the stadium.
Yeah.
That seems like a real bargain to me.
It is, given that an MLS team costs you $300 million.
I knew that there were some rumors that there was some sales stuff going on, but with all the rebranding and all the oddities that's been going on there and the just lack of getting anybody to show up to those games, despite the fact that they have a cool stadium and a very good location, in many ways I think is a way more damning story than what's happening with Dallas up in Frisco.
Yeah.
It was interesting somebody was willing to put up $400 million, although I still think that's somewhat of a bargain based on how the value of these things have just continued to increase.
It'll probably rebrand again.
Yeah, well, who knows? Okay, and then did you guys want to spend any time talking about the Crew rebrand and then not rebrand and then kind of rebrand?
Only the sense that I think it shows the power fans can have when you have a legitimately engaged, fanatical fan base. You know, that they made. The owner was smart enough to recognize that he was tone deaf and missed it. The Chicago owners didn't do that, for example. So,
But they did. That Chicago's rebranding.
I know, but
again.
they didn't go backwards though. Like this crew, when they're like, okay, we get it, cruise in. Like the Fire, were still like they trashed the logo and all that stuff. I mean, I guess that's what they did here too. Right? Yeah.
Chicago actually, I think, has done a really good job of being open and transparent about the process of redoing the logo again. They've been putting out documents and papers and all kinds of stuff about the process.
And I guess they kept the Fire name, which is what everyone really pushed back on. So,
Crew.
No, I meant the Chicago.
They
well,
did keep...
that wasn't really in doubt, was it? It was just that logo was terrible and the colors.
That's the funny thing about the Crew piece of this is that my sense is that the outrage really wasn't over the logo, which that should have been equal to it. It was just simply about the removal of the term Crew as officially part of the name.
It was stupid. Why would you? I mean, they kind of took it to. I mean, let's talk like in some weird suboptimal way. They actually went more European than most of the rebrands because they were like, hey, we get to have a nickname that isn't part of the actual team name.
Right, like Red Devils or...
Meanwhile, the Crew fans are all like, no, still Columbus Crew. Still acknowledge 1996, please.
I like the little 96 on the new logo. Rather than whatever the little goatee was or whatever.
Well, I think the triangle had something to do with some element of the new stadium.
I think that's the reason for the shape of the C being like a carabiner as well.
Oh, maybe that's what the stadium reference was. I know that the shape of the overall badge is the Ohio State flag, correct?
Yeah.
I don't know. It all seemed very weird to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad the ownership was at least self-aware enough that they had to do something about it.
I guess the question I have coming off the back of it really was with all these teams rebranding. I don't know how you guys. I'm curious how you guys feel about the FC Dallas brand. Would you be interested in a rebrand, or would you be happy to stick with what it is now?
Well, I said all along, if FC Dallas, if a fan of this club had one thing to never worry about, it's this club rebranding, as long as the Hunts are owners, because I guarantee you on the list of things that they would think about over the course of a business week, that's absolutely the thing at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, I probably would agree with that. No, but I'm just curious what you two guys think. I mean, do you like the FC Dallas brand?
I'll let Dan go first.
Dan?
I'm fine with it. It's a little bit boring. I think we kind of had this that discussion in the Discord server. I actually like the logo. I think it's very well thought out. The ball, the very sleek representation of the Shawnee Trail with the Longhorn and having the 96 in there, having the burn flame. There's a lot of good elements in like a classic shape of a logo that's not the roundel we see everywhere these days. And you see it from afar and that's FC Dallas, which not a lot of teams can say right now.
Second oldest logo in the league.
But I think, that's true. I think, if you look at what they did around that, I think they got a good start there. And then, the inconsistency with the kit, the mascot being a goofy cartoon ball that somehow has a six-pack and pecs, weirdly.
He does a lot of... Tex Hooper does like 1,000 sit-ups a day, Dan.
And if you believe all the songs that come out of the supporters section, he does a lot of coke and he shoots pornography.
I missed that.
There used to be a time where the guy in the suit would actually pull out when there's only one Tex Hooper walking along wearing a thong. He would actually pull out like a lady's thong out of his shorts and throw it into the crowd. But I think the front office got a little bit upset at that getting on camera. Then I think that guy ended up losing the job. And
how am I just not hearing about this?
I've never heard that story before.
I think he was still in New Orleans at the time. It was like a running thing. Every week another thong would come out.
That's a good bit.
And then he used to get, and then he'd do like puffing motions when it was, what was the other one? It was
Something about drugs.
There was one about doing smoking a bong, and he'd do that as well. But yeah.
And you wonder why that guy got fired.
Family friendly Tex Hooper.
But it was always kind of silly, like little things like that. Not really knowing how to celebrate a goal. Oh, let's have a cow brand leather because that makes perfect. There were always like very, very silly things. Whether it's even little things like the fonts being inconsistent and there being 20,000 different shades of red on the website when you've got these names like Bovine Blue, Shawnee Silver, and Republic Red. Like, just they're anyone that's worked with a brand guide kind of should know it's a very rigid thing because you're making the brand that much more prestigious, which then helps you to spread the word of that brand. And there's probably 95% of people in DFW you could show the FC Dallas logo to and they'd be like, what the hell is that? Or that's a team my kid played against.
Yeah, I all these years on, I've become just kind of numb and used to all of it. I'll never forget the day when Buzz called me. I think it was on I was in a rental car, and Buzz called and said they were getting ready to announce the rebrand. And I was like, what? Because I remember us being like all in a tizzy over what it was going to be. We were so excited that there was some kick-ass thing headed our way.
Yeah.
Remember this, Buzz? Like
yeah.
It was like waiting for them to announce the Pope. We were waiting for the white or the black smoke to appear out of the chimney, and it was like, oh, I can't wait to see what this is. And then it was the most milquetoast, mundane, weirdo. I don't know. I mean, I used to call it the worst sports marketing decision in Dallas sports history, and I still believe that to be true. But all these years later, it clearly is a thing that is a thing that people are aware of. And when I went to a tournament in Vegas a couple of years ago, there was an adult tournament going on in one part of Vegas and a kids tournament going on in another, and there was kids in FC Dallas gear everywhere. And I will never forget seeing some kids from a team from Colorado see other kids from FC Dallas walk by, and they were like, oh, those are kids from FC Dallas. I bet they're really good. And I was like, okay, then it's just ground itself into place. But in terms of branding, I agree with Dan. The logo, it's okay. But everything else in terms of the branding is just a total and utter disaster in my mind. It's just difficult. And it's largely because they just don't do anything with it, and it's only established itself just over the course of time, not because they've done anything creative or good with it. All right, so now let's keep going on Buzz's crayon-written run sheet. The GA Cup. Yeah. I thought are they not doing that in Dallas now? Is it? No. They've moved it.
Yep, they're moving it around a little bit. It's in Atlanta.
Yeah. Or I bet Andy Swift is relieved that he didn't have to manage that anymore.
Yeah, I bet he is too. That thing was a whip. I mean, they wanted to try and give it to some other people. It may come back here eventually, I'm sure, but it's going to be Atlanta. And FC Dallas is going to play Atlanta United, LA Galaxy, and the Columbus Crew.
And this is the U17 teams?
U17 team, yeah. And this, in the past, they've had international teams, so there may not be international teams because of COVID, obviously.
Right.
But still, this will be a more concentrated event. Higher pressure event. They'll probably bring everybody back down to their appropriate age groups. So it'll be a good competition.
Okay. Is it being streamed or broadcast anywhere? Do you know?
They have been in the past. They've been. And now that let me think about that a second. I think there's a selection of games that are going to be on MLS's website. I can't remember the exact number. Maybe 25 games. It's certainly the later round games. I'm sure they will put FC Dallas on because that's a high marquee name in the academy world, so I guarantee you some of those games.
What I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, they'll be on for sure. I would imagine.
I was wrong about that branding. It worked great. It's a marquee name now.
It's a marquee name in the academy. It's not a marquee name, outside of that. Unfortunately, they don't do a good job of selling to that age group, tickets. So there's that.
But hey, that counts on the 18 to 49 demographic as long as you're talking about the under 19 team.
Well, is there anybody on the under 17 team that everybody should be on the lookout for?
Oh, yeah.
Or is that a particularly good team?
Oh, yeah. No, that's really good. the 04s of that group have already been moved up to the 19s because the 05s is one of the two stacked and loaded classes, 05 and 06. I mean, Corcoran's an 06, but the 05s are a bunch of good players on that team. How many of them are going to come good and turn into pros is yet to be seen, but that's a really loaded group. Diego Hernandez is the leader of that team. He's the one that made his debut last year with North Texas when he was a U15. So he's for sure good. I like Anthony Ramirez on that team, although he's a little undersized. That's the team that's got Knight Pickering on it.
Will Cochran travel with this team too?
No, he'll be down with the U15s for whatever they're doing, or he'll be with North Texas, one or the other. He plays with North Texas. He either trains and plays with North Texas, or if there's a big U15 thing, then he'll go back and play because he's their, big, huge Mongo player. So,
Oh, I would just think they would move him up to the 17s for a tournament of this importance.
He often does play up with, in the past, he would often play up with that group. It just depends on, whether they think he'll get more growth from this tournament or whether they think something the F-15s are doing is better. They move, guys like him get to move up and down between the groups a lot. For the Dallas Cup, they put him back with the 15s, so it just depends on what else is going on. So it's entirely possible. Yeah, he could be. That'd be cool. Obviously I'll try and keep an eye on that. And if he is, I'll let you guys know and you can watch. But that 17 team's got a lot of talent. There's lots of guys on that team that are worth watching. Probably as many as 5 or 6 guys that could end up being pros still from that group. Maybe not like in the next year, but in the next couple of years. Ostensibly Antonio Carrera is their goalkeeper who's with North Texas and FC Dallas all the time. He's that 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that. All right, now, I in particular, but I think all of us would agree, this has been a rather fussy episode of the podcast. Lots of fussing and wailing and gnashing of teeth and kind of an overall negative vibe. I'd like to end the pod on something positive. Do you, Buzz or Dan, do you have something positive and uplifting to end the podcast with?
Well, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, it's we've been talking a little bit about MPSL season previews. Nico did one for Irving FC. They kicked their season off at the weekend. I've got one coming up for Texas United. Yep. They're kicking their season off in USL League 2 this coming weekend. They'll also be having their first home game the Wednesday after. They're actually kind of doing some big things. They never had a youth team, but suddenly they're in the next USL Academy and MLS next season. So they're kind of setting things up right now. And they, speaking to Ares Alani, the head coach and the technical director, they really are trying to be true to their name. This whole Texas United thing. They've had, they're playing their games in Richardson. Their front office is in Frisco. They've had trials in Fort Worth and a bunch of places in between. They're really trying to go for every young player that FC Dallas isn't picking up because FC Dallas picks up most of its players from Collin County.
Okay. That sounds more like a promotion than something positive, but okay.
No, I just think it's positive to see the growth of the game in the area, and I was really kind of impressed when I spoke to Ares. It was a month or two ago now, but it's going to be cool seeing two teams start their season, and both of them really kind of bringing on bigger things.
Okay, I accept.
My positive was North Texas Soccer Club got a win last weekend. They seem to have found their center back pairing.
Oh, good.
Which moves Allison back into the midfield, so that's solidified. So things are moving in the right direction. Eric Quill, of course, has got things going like he always does. Rebuilds that team and gets it moving in the right way. So they're at Toronto this weekend, so that's always one of the other teams in the league that actually uses a lot of their academy kids. So there actually will be some talent. There'll probably be a guy or two in that game that you'll see playing with Toronto within a year or two. Just like Dallas does, young talent.
All right. Is that Toronto in Broward County, Florida?
Yeah, I don't know where the game is. I assume it's probably something like that in Florida.
My positive thing I'm bringing to the table is from our guest last week, Steve Fenn, who put out another kick-ass tableau graphic today, which is titled MLS is not an oligarchy. There is little relationship between wages and results. And it's a beautiful – have you guys seen this yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is really beautiful little graphical design that he put together that essentially is trying to prove out that how much money you spend doesn't necessarily correlate into good results. And if you dig around and you move your cursor over the dots, on the graph there are dots and then there are stars. And the stars represent teams that won the Supporter Shield and or MLS Cup. And if you go all the way back, all the way to the upper left corner in the quadrants called low wages, good results, the star farthest all the way up into this quadrant, the 2016 FC Dallas Supporter Shield winning team.
Oh, that is positive. I didn't notice that. I'll take a look.
Low
That's
wages,
beautiful.
good results. It's so lovely. It's so beautiful. It is the FC Dallas way.
I miss Oscar so much.
Hey, thanks to Pappy Check for the music. We do love the music. And don't forget that Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90, the brand new FC Dallas Prime Blue jerseys, which these are the new annual recycle specials they do. Promo?
Yes.
Okay. They haven't announced these yet, have they?
No, but they're going to be on sale.
But we don't know what they look like or any. Dan, have you seen any designs or mock-ups of them?
Yes, they are the 2020 template of the Condivo jersey, which has like a brushstroke pattern on the front and that thick color from the jersey last season. They'll be in blue with an orange logo.
Okay. And then something called the Pride pre-match tops, which I believe are that kind of tie-dye design for their inclusive program or promotion.
Yep.
Okay. Well, both of those things are in stock now. And don't forget, if you want to go buy them because you're a listener of Third Degree of the podcast, you get 25% off at soccer90.com. You just got to use the code Third Degree at the checkout. All right. Well, I feel like we ended on we stuck the landing, guys. So Dan, thank you today for your time and your good humor and all your positive energy, sir.
Well, thank you for your energy.
Thank you for thanking me. And Buzz, thank you, sir. And hey, congratulations on getting to talk to Luchi in person for the first time in a year. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's like being an actual reporter. It's kind of fun.
I wonder if he'll do it again next week with you.
I mean, I don't know why. I mean, it depends on his schedule, probably.
Yeah.
Unless I get him in trouble for talking to me now by talking about it.
He got a finger to the face when he got into the building.
He might get wagged at for being like, you broke the rules. It's like, come on.
Buzz, you did make the media call happen late. Well, not late, on time.
Yeah. Well, as much as I've had to wait on those calls like for 30 minutes or an hour sometimes for people to show up, everyone else can wait this time.
And thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. We'll talk to you next week, hopefully after a win, right? We're going to get a win at home against RSL on another edition of Third Degree, the podcast.
It's not that bad. Stay positive.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.